As long as I can keep doing it, we're good.
I was told to ask you about kind of the Greek financial crisis.
Sure.
And, that's fascinating because if it drops the euro, then there's the drachma. It obviously has implications on different currencies. Are you Greek?
Yes, I am.
Okay.
I lived in Greece most of my childhood. I graduated from high school there.
Okay.
Yeah, and
What,
my parents are still in Greece
oh,
at the
they're still
moment.
there.
Yeah.
What's your thought on what's happening there? And are there any implications to something like, Bitcoin?
Well, what's happening there is really tragic. It's a demonstration of the failure of central banking and of really bad governance over 20 years and really bad spending decisions and of manipulations by banks and leveraged investments that blew up in everybody's face and the financial crisis and a recession all mixed together in an environment where Greece doesn't have the traditional ability that most sovereign states have to simply inflate their way out of the crisis by printing money, because Germany doesn't want to do that, because the central bank doesn't want to do that. So as a result, Greece is trapped in this monetary cycle where the economy is collapsing. It's crashed 25%, which has never happened in peacetime in any European country. Unemployment among under 30-year-olds is 60% and climbing, which is devastating for an entire generation. And at the current rate, Greece would have to spend 2% of its GDP for the next 30 years just to barely make a dent in this debt, which means that functionally the country is insolvent, will never be able to pay this debt, and the debt will only keep getting worse. It's in a death spiral of debt, and the only real solution is to write off a lot of it. It's unpayable. You can't expect a country to pay 2% of its GDP in debt, because if you do that, what's the average GDP rate across Europe? Well, it's 2.5%. You're condemning an entire generation to a no-growth economy for 30 years. And the worst part of this is that this is all wrapped in a sort of Calvinist moralistic tale of bad, lazy, tax-avoiding Greeks who don't pay their debt, and it's morally wrong to pay your debt. This is finance, it's not ethics. This is not a moral failing or a character flaw, because you can't assign character flaws to an entire nation. That's a somewhat overbroad generalization. You might be accused of a certain level of, let's say, prejudice when you apply that. Greek people are hardworking. In fact, their working hours are higher than most European nations. And many Greek people paid their taxes their whole life. My dad certainly did. He also invested in a private retirement fund that then got nationalized and cut in half through no fault of his own. And then the other idea that somehow people in a country are responsible for the choice of their government. I don't know what's going on in England lately, but do you have perfect democracy that completely represents the opinions of the people, and therefore you can hold them completely responsible for everything their leaders do? I don't think any country has that. Certainly not Greece. And so to not only condemn an entire people, but then condemn an entire generation for the bad choices of a few select people in government who were quite comfortably aided and abetted by banks that made an enormous amount of profit on all of this, while at the same time, those same banks have received trillions of dollars in interest-free bailouts with no strings attached and complete forgiveness. Nobody's moralizing against them, right? That, I think, is fundamentally unfair. So what's the relationship with Bitcoin? Unfortunately, Greece isn't ready for Bitcoin. You need infrastructure, you need education, you need familiarity with the system, you need technological support, smartphone applications. You need, Bitcoin isn't ready for Greece. There's not enough capacity. The user interfaces are still very kludgy, sucky, not particularly polished. The experience is choppy and not very smooth. And it's very difficult to secure properly unless you really know what you're doing, which means there are probably a few tens of thousands of people in Greece who are technically sophisticated enough, have just the right amount of cash that they need to get out of the country, can find someone to convert it to Bitcoin, know how to secure that Bitcoin, and can probably use it to save themselves from this crisis, which isn't going to save Greece. right? You're not going to do anything with saving 10,000 people in that population. However, the fact that you can save a few thousand points to a future where when digital currencies, probably Bitcoin, but in fact any decentralized digital currency like Bitcoin, is prevalent, widely adopted, smooth, easy to use, and secure, the idea of a monetary crisis that takes an entire population hostage is no longer viable. If the entire population has the means and the opportunity to simply opt out of the currency and go internet currency on their own, you can't take them hostage anymore. The Greek government will still use the euro, and all of the Greeks won't. So you can imagine how this would play out 10, 20 years in the future if the currency was a bit further. With Bitcoin, there are no bail-ins, no bank holidays, no seizures, no currency controls. No one can stop you, censor you, take away your money, stop you from spending it. None of that. And so the fact that that is understood offers a really strong counterexample of what the future could hold for monetary crises around the world. The Argentinians get this. The Venezuelans get this. They don't necessarily all know that Bitcoin is a potential solution, but a lot of people do. The Greeks get this. The Italians, Portuguese, Irish, and Spanish should be paying attention because it didn't start in Greece. It started in Cyprus, and it won't end in Greece. Coming soon to another European country around you. This is going to be Europe eating its children, and it's not stopping yet. But we can see a world where the idea of currency choice subverts the very concept of a national currency monopoly. Just like the idea of a national phone company was completely destroyed by the internet. The idea of censorship over information and a monopoly over TV news or radio news or any of those things was completely destroyed by the internet. And people suddenly had choice and freedom. We're now doing that to money. Bitcoin can't save us this time, but the fact that it might in the future just gives us a glimpse into how things can be different. And of course, that means that a lot of people are speculating. They're like getting excited about Bitcoin. It's getting all of the headlines again. The price is going up. But really, that has nothing to do with saving Greece. What Greece demonstrates is a fundamental failure of central banking, because the really crazy, radical experiment in money isn't Bitcoin. In the last 6 years, there has been an absolutely radical experiment in money, and that is that for the first time in history, central banks took interest rates to zero. And it wasn't just one of them, even though it was unprecedented, but 21 central banks have taken the interest rate to zero, left it there for 6 years, and cannot raise it again, because if they raised it a tiny bit, the entire economy would collapse. This has never happened before. It's the most radical monetary policy experiment since the introduction of central banking in the 1920s. We don't know how it will end, but in most likelihood, it will not end well. In monetary terms, what we've done at this point is like giving the economy an intravenous cocaine drip on full blast for 6 years. And at some point, there's going to be a hangover, and it's going to be brutal, because now the patient is barely awake on a full drip of cocaine, and we're running out of cocaine, right?
That's a fabulous analogy. You know your economics very well. It's fascinating to hear what you have to say about that. 20 years from now, what is the cryptocurrency space going to look like, and what other industries, markets will have taken on, not only the blockchain, but the technology? You talked about real estate earlier and other ownership pieces. Realistically, or should we be looking about 40 years from now? But what about 20? To watch the rest of this fascinating interview, click on the link below and go to londonrealacademy.com. There you can sign in with your social media login and watch the rest of the episode for free, along with all of our episodes on London Real, my webinars, and all of our premium content, all located over at londonrealacademy.com. So click on the link below. You'll be directed there, and you can watch the rest of this fascinating interview, and I'll see you there.